Braving the Wilderness, The Quest for True Belonging and the Courage to Stand Alone by BrenA Brown. Picture this. You're in 8th grade, standing in front of the gym door. There's a single sheet of paper taped up, covered in numbers. Your heart is hammering so hard you can practically hear it echoing in the empty hallway. This isn't just any list. This is everything. Your ticket to a new high school, new friends, maybe even a whole new you. It's the list of girls who made the drill team, the Bear Cadets. For one particular girl who'd spent most of her childhood feeling like the perpetual outsider, this was her moment. She'd rehearsed that jazzy routine to Swanee until she could nail it blindfolded. She'd even survived the same brutal 2-week liquid diet all the other hopefuls were doing, just to make the weigh-in. In her mind, she could already see herself in that uniform, executing perfect high kicks under the Friday night lights, while her big sis decorated her locker with ribbons and inside jokes. For someone whose home life was crumbling under the weight of her parents' constant fighting, this team represented so much more than dance moves. It was sanctuary. It was belonging. So there she stood at that gym door while her family waited in the car. Her tryout number was 62. Her eyes traced down the list, 59, 61, then jumped to 64, 65. Nothing. Her number had vanished. While she stood there, willing those digits to somehow materialize, another girl beside her erupted into pure joy. Her dad leaped from his car and swept her up in one of those movie-perfect twirls. Meanwhile, the girl who didn't make it trudged back to the family station wagon, climbed into the back seat, and braced herself for what came next. Here's the kicker, though. Her parents said absolutely nothing, not a single word. That silence somehow screamed louder than any lecture ever could. It was the deafening quiet of shame, the kind that whispers, "You failed. You're not enough. You don't belong here." That crushing moment of rejection is where we're starting today. It's a real story from the life of Dr. BrenA Brown, a researcher who's dedicated more than 20 years to understanding courage, vulnerability, and shame. Her work has touched millions through several #1 bestsellers and a TED Talk that's become one of the most viewed in history. In Braving the Wilderness, she digs into something we all desperately crave, that deep, almost painful need to belong somewhere. Here's where things get interesting. What if everything you think you know about belonging is actually backwards? What if trying to fit in is the exact opposite of true belonging? And what if the real path to finding where you truly belong means having the guts to stand completely alone? That's the provocative promise of this book. By the time we're done here, you'll grasp what BrenA calls true belonging, a way of being so solidly grounded in yourself that you somehow belong everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It's an expedition into uncharted territory, and we're diving in right now. You know that feeling, right? That gnawing, almost desperate need to be part of something. To have your people, your crew, your place where everyone just gets you. It's coded into our very DNA. Way back when, our survival literally depended on being part of the group. Getting kicked out meant almost certain death. So we learned early, really early, how to blend in and fit the mold. BrenA Brown understands this better than most. That painful drill team memory wasn't just a one-off disappointment. It was basically the soundtrack to her childhood. She was constantly the new kid, bouncing from New Orleans to Houston to Washington, D.C. and back again. She was the Episcopalian girl in Catholic school. She even had the name Cassandra BrenA Brown, which led to all kinds of awkward assumptions in the racially divided South of the 1970s. So she became an expert at fitting in, a human chameleon. She'd watch people carefully, decode their patterns, figure out exactly what they wanted to hear and how they expected her to behave. She could shapeshift into whatever the moment called for, but in the process, something frightening happened. She lost herself. She couldn't tell you what she actually liked, what she truly believed, or who she really was. All of it sacrificed in this frantic search for somewhere to belong. This trap catches so many of us. We convince ourselves that belonging is something other people give us, that we have to earn it by being cool enough, smart enough, or agreeable enough. We chase approval like it's oxygen, and we sand down all those interesting, quirky parts of ourselves to squeeze into whatever shape the group demands. But here's what Brene discovered through her research, and it's kind of mind-blowing. Fitting in actually blocks you from belonging. Think about it for a second. When you're just fitting in, you're not showing anyone the real you. You're showing them a carefully edited highlight reel, the version you think they'll approve of. Real belonging, though, that only happens when you show up as your authentic, messy, imperfect self. It's being genuinely seen and accepted for who you actually are, which means your ability to belong can never exceed your ability to accept yourself. For years, Brene wrestled with this truth. She found her way gradually. She got sober. She met Steve, who became her husband, someone who saw the real her and loved her anyway. She became a researcher, and even there, she felt like an outsider. Her professors warned her away from messy topics like shame and vulnerability. They insisted a qualitative dissertation was career suicide. They told her she couldn't be a serious academic while also writing books for regular people. At every single crossroads, people told her to fit into the established box of what a proper researcher should be, and at every single crossroads, she chose not to. It was terrifying. It kept her up at night, with anxiety. But she understood, somewhere deep in her bones, that the cost of fitting in, of muting her own voice and curiosity, was simply too steep, would have cost her everything that mattered. This brings us to the book's central paradox, a quote from the legendary poet Maya Angelou that haunted Brene for over 2 decades. In a 1973 interview, Dr. Angelou said something striking. "You are only free when you realize you belong no place. You belong every place. No place at all. The price is high, the reward is great." When Brene first encountered those words, she thought they were just flat out wrong. Belong nowhere? That sounded like her worst nightmare, like the textbook definition of loneliness. It was precisely what she'd spent her entire life running from. How could this brilliant woman, her hero, say something so completely opposite to everything she believed about connection? It took 20 years, an entire career studying human connection, and one pivotal conversation for the pieces to finally click into place. The breakthrough came after she'd achieved remarkable success. She'd appeared on Oprah, actually met Maya Angelou in person, and was speaking to massive audiences. But she still felt like she didn't quite fit anywhere, constantly being asked to modify herself for different contexts. Don't swear here, don't mention your faith there, wear a business suit for this one. She was exhausted from it all. She decided to just be herself, even if that meant never quite fitting into any single box. One evening, she confessed to Steve, "I don't belong anywhere. I belong no place. I've got no crew." Steve, in his characteristically quiet way, said something that shifted everything. He reminded her that despite being an outlier, she'd been the highest-rated speaker at a recent conference, showing up in her jeans and clogs just being herself. He told her, "You will always belong anywhere you show up as yourself and talk about your work in a real way." That was the moment. The light bulb finally clicked on. She practically ran to her computer and pulled up that full Maya Angelou interview, the parts she'd never watched before. She found the crucial exchange she'd been missing. The interviewer had asked, Do you belong to anyone? Maya Angelou's response. More and more. I belong to myself. I'm very proud of that. I belong to myself. Those 4 words changed everything. True belonging isn't something you discover out in the world. It's not something you negotiate with other people or groups. It's actually a spiritual practice. It's the practice of believing in yourself and belonging to yourself so completely that you can share your most genuine self with the world. When you do that, you discover something sacred, both in being part of something larger and in standing alone when you need to. This is what Brene calls braving the wilderness. The wilderness represents those moments when we have to stand alone, when we have to speak our truth, even knowing we might face criticism, rejection, and fear. It's untamed, unpredictable territory of solitude and soul-searching. It's a place that's as breathtaking as it is dangerous. But here's the secret she uncovered. The wilderness is actually the only place where genuine belonging can happen, because real belonging doesn't ask you to change who you are. It demands that you be who you are. This sounds great in theory, but we're navigating a world that makes it incredibly challenging. We're experiencing what Brene calls a spiritual crisis of disconnection. We've sorted ourselves into ideological fortresses. We're living in one giant echo chamber, only listening to voices that already mirror our own beliefs. We scroll through social media feeds that paint everything as us versus them. We're more politically and socially segregated than we've ever been. You'd think with all this sorting we'd at least feel closer to our chosen tribes, right? But the data reveals exactly the opposite. As our sorting has intensified, so has our loneliness. Today, over 40% of American adults report feeling lonely on a regular basis. And loneliness isn't just emotionally painful, it's actually lethal. One major study found that living with chronic loneliness increases your odds of premature death by 45%. That's more dangerous than obesity or heavy drinking. Why is it so deadly? Because as social creatures, we're hardwired for connection. Loneliness is essentially a biological alarm system, just like hunger or thirst. It's your body's way of telling you that you need meaningful human interaction to survive and thrive. So why are we so sorted yet so isolated? Brene argues the main culprit is fear. Fear of being vulnerable, fear of getting hurt, fear of conflict, fear of not measuring up. Fear drives us into those ideological bunkers where we think we'll be protected. But those bunkers shield us from everything except the one thing that actually hurts most: loneliness and disconnection. So how do we escape? How do we find our way back to ourselves and to each other? Brene's research identified 4 practices of true belonging. These aren't simple steps or easy fixes. They're paradoxical and challenging. They're the essential skills we need to brave the wilderness. The first practice is, people are hard to hate close up, so move in. Hating a faceless group is surprisingly easy. We see a label: Democrat, Republican, feminist, evangelical, and we immediately fill in the blanks with stereotypes and assumptions. But when we zoom in on our actual lived experiences, everything gets messy and complicated. Your best friend at work who talked you through that family crisis, she's a Democrat. Your son-in-law who's an incredible father to your grandchildren, he's a Republican. That teacher who completely changed your life, she's pro-life. What we experience up close is real and complex. The rhetoric we consume from a distance is often specifically designed to make us afraid and angry, because anger is so much easier to sit with than pain. As writer James Baldwin observed, I imagine one of the reasons people cling to their hates so stubbornly is because they sense, once hate is gone, they will be forced to deal with pain. Moving in means getting physically and emotionally closer to people, even those we disagree with. It means choosing curiosity over defensiveness. But this doesn't mean we tolerate absolutely everything. There's a clear line we can't cross, and that line is dehumanization. Dehumanization happens when we start viewing others as less than human. It begins with language, calling people animals, vermin, or monsters. It's what historically allows societies to justify cruelty and violence. When we hear dehumanizing language, whether it's aimed at politicians we despise or groups we fear, we have to actively reject it. Because when we participate in dehumanizing others, we actually diminish our own humanity in the process. True belonging requires holding people accountable for their actions without stripping away their fundamental humanity. The second practice is, speak truth to empty rhetoric, and be civil while doing it. There's an important distinction between outright lying and what's called nonsense. A liar knows the truth and actively tries to hide it. Someone spouting nonsense, though, doesn't care about truth at all. They're just trying to persuade you, to recruit you to their side. Truth be damned. One of the most common forms of rhetorical nonsense is the false choice. You're either with us or you're against us. This tactic shuts down real debate and forces people to pick a side. It preys directly on our primal fear of being cast out of the tribe. Brene shares a powerful personal story about this. She grew up in a hunting family in Texas, where gun safety and respecting the animal were absolute, non-negotiable rules. As she got older, she watched the gun debate become increasingly polarized and toxic. One day at an event, she casually mentioned she was teaching her son to shoot skeet. A woman immediately confronted her, saying, quote, "I'm very surprised to hear that you're a gun lover. You don't strike me as the typical member of that crowd type." Brene was instantly being shoved into a false with us or against us box. She could have easily pandered to the audience and denounced her family's traditions to fit in with the room. Or she could have gotten defensive and angry. Instead, she chose the wilderness. She calmly explained that she supports responsible gun ownership and also supports common-sense gun regulations like universal background checks and waiting periods. She supports both because it's not actually either-or. The woman became visibly angry and snapped, "You either support guns or you don't." Brene refused to accept those as the only two options. She responded, "I'm not going to participate in a debate where we reduce this incredibly complex and important issue to, you either support guns or you don't. It matters too much for that kind of oversimplification." She didn't betray herself to appease the crowd. She stood firmly in her integrity, alone in that moment. It wasn't comfortable or fun, but she belonged to herself. That's what speaking truth to empty rhetoric looks like, and doing it with respect, without personally attacking the other person. That's the definition of real civility. The third practice is hold hands with strangers. If we're going to maintain faith in our shared humanity, we need to actually witness it in action. We have to actively seek out and experience moments of connection that cut right through our differences. Brene discovered that people with the strongest sense of true belonging deliberately pursue moments of collective joy and collective pain. Think about being in a stadium with 95,000 strangers all singing the same anthem before a big match, scarves raised high, some with tears streaming down their faces. Or sitting in a darkened movie theater when a beloved character dies, and glancing around to see 200 strangers all raising their hands, pointing imaginary wands toward the screen in spontaneous solidarity. Or being at a concert, belting out lyrics to a song from your youth, surrounded by thousands of people who share that exact same memory and feeling. These moments are what sociologist Emile Durkheim called, quote, collective effervescence. It's this sensation of something sacred happening when we become part of something much bigger than ourselves. It reminds us that beneath all our political labels and ideological disagreements, we're inextricably connected as human beings. The same principle applies to moments of shared pain. Attending a funeral together, gathering for a vigil after tragedy, or simply crying alongside friends. These moments remind us we're not alone in our grief and struggle. But there's a counterfeit version of this that we need to watch out for: common enemy intimacy. This is that cheap, easy connection we feel when we bond with someone over hating the same people or groups. It feels satisfying in the moment, but it's not genuine connection. It's just another flavor of us versus them. Real collective joy and pain are inclusive by nature. They don't come at the expense of dehumanizing others. This brings us to the final, and perhaps most crucial, practice. It's the one that weaves everything else together: strong back, soft front, wild heart. This is the posture we need to adopt if we're going to brave the wilderness successfully. A strong back means having a spine. It's about being deeply rooted in your values and having the courage to maintain your boundaries. It's about learning to say no when necessary and releasing the exhausting need to please everyone around you. It's about taking responsibility for your mistakes instead of deflecting blame onto others. A strong back is built through the daily practice of integrity. A soft front is about staying open and vulnerable even when it's scary. It's about choosing love and connection over armor and defensiveness. When we get hurt, our natural instinct is to build walls, to develop what people call thick skin. But here's the problem: an armored front doesn't just block out the painful stuff, it also blocks out the beautiful stuff. Love, joy, genuine intimacy, all of these require a soft front. It's not weakness or naivete, it's actually the ultimate display of courage. When you combine a strong back with a soft front, you cultivate what Brene calls a wild heart. A wild heart is the hallmark of someone who has braved the wilderness and been fundamentally transformed by the experience. A wild heart can hold life's inherent paradoxes without breaking. It can be simultaneously tough and tender, brave and afraid. It can fight passionately for justice and peace in the world, while also cultivating moments of personal joy without guilt. A wild heart understands you can feel deep gratitude for your own blessings, while still acknowledging and caring about others' pain. Most importantly, a wild heart has learned what might be the most transformative lesson of all, a practice you can start implementing today. Stop walking through the world searching for confirmation that you don't belong. Because if that's what you're looking for, you will absolutely find it. If you scan people's faces for evidence that you're not smart enough, not cool enough, not good enough, that evidence will appear everywhere you look. True belonging isn't something we negotiate with the outside world. The truth about who we are lives inside our own hearts. Our job is simply to protect that wild heart from constant external evaluation, especially from our own harsh inner critic. At the end of her journey, Brene finally understood what Maya Angelou had meant all those years ago. To belong nowhere and everywhere simultaneously means being so firmly rooted in your own heart, so completely at home in your own skin, that your sense of belonging doesn't depend on any person, place, or group. You carry it with you wherever you go. You become free. The price is definitely high. It requires vulnerability, discomfort, and the willingness to stand alone when necessary. But the reward is extraordinary. It's the reward of a life lived with integrity, courage, and genuine connection. It's the freedom that comes when you can stand right in the middle of the wilderness, look around, and say with absolute conviction, "I am the wilderness." As I sit with Braving the Wilderness, I'm struck by how urgently we need this message right now. We're drowning in division. The easiest path is to pick your team, retreat into your fortress, and scream at everyone on the other side. This book is a brave and compassionate challenge to do exactly the opposite. It's an invitation to step out of the fortress and into that messy, uncomfortable, beautiful space where real human connection lives. What makes BrenA Brown's work so compelling is that it's not just opinion or inspirational fluff. It's built on 2 decades of rigorous research into real human experiences. When she describes these 4 practices of true belonging, she's not speculating or guessing. She's sharing an actual map, drawn from the stories of people who have successfully navigated this difficult terrain. The core idea that true belonging starts with belonging to yourself feels almost revolutionary in a culture constantly telling us our worth depends on external validation. It's a quiet rebellion of self-acceptance. And that image of strong back, soft front, wild heart might be one of the most practical and memorable frameworks for courageous living I've encountered. It's a mantra you can carry into a tense conversation, a nerve-wracking presentation, or a contentious family gathering. So how can you actually start putting this into practice today? You don't need to do everything at once. Start small and specific. First, try moving in. Next time you feel that flash of anger or judgment towards someone with different political views, get curious instead of righteous. Ask them a genuine question like, "Help me understand why this matters so much to you." You don't have to agree with their answer. You just have to listen long enough to glimpse their humanity beneath the label. Second, practice having a strong back and soft front in one small moment. Maybe it's finally setting a clear boundary with that friend who's chronically late, doing it firmly but kindly. Or maybe it's choosing not to get defensive when someone offers you critical feedback, and instead just saying, "Thank you, I'll think about that." Finally, hold hands with strangers. Make it a point to attend something that creates collective joy. Go to a concert, a sporting event, a community festival, or even just a packed movie theater on opening night. Put your phone away completely. Look around at the other faces. Feel the shared energy in the room. Let it remind you that despite all our differences, we're far more connected than we are divided. This journey definitely isn't easy. Braving the wilderness means you're going to get scratched up and bruised. You'll feel lonely at times. But what this book promises is that on the other side of that fear lies a sense of freedom and wholeness that simply fitting in could never provide. It's the deep peace that comes from knowing that wherever you are, you're at home in your own heart. That was a summary of Braving the Wilderness by BrenA Brown. We've explored the major ideas today, but honestly, a summary can only ever be a rough map. The real adventure happens when you walk the path yourself. The true power of this book lives in the detailed stories, the nuance, and the way BreNA's words can meet you exactly where you are in your life right now. This summary is your starting point, a way to see if this journey calls to you. If anything we've discussed has sparked something inside you, I really encourage you to grab a copy and experience it yourself. Reading it isn't just about absorbing concepts. It's an experience that can fundamentally shift how you see yourself and your place in the world. You'll find the link to the book in the description below. Also, if you found value in this exploration, please take a moment to click that like button and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next deep dive into another transformative book. Let's keep learning and growing together.